I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Creates Bornean Orangutan Go Out and Sketch instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to sketch a Bornean orangutan. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you go out to sketch. Head out to a zoo or just sketch from a live HD video of an orangutan at home. I chose to sketch a Bornean orangutan at my local zoo, the Los Angeles Zoo. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, make observations, and paint. Don't let yourself get too caught up with the accuracy and details. Just relax and have fun. Apply what you know about orangutans from your step-by-step sketching lesson. First, use a pencil to lightly draw a rough, sketchy outline of the orangutan to get the basic shape. It's a little trickier than outlining a plant, but first, kind of think of the orangutan as like one big shape. Figure out where you want to place that on the page. And the shape is kind of round, curved out. There's a couple curves coming out. And that is our basic shape. Just really rough, really sketchy. Then you can start to add in details as the orangutan becomes available in what you see. So, for instance, once his face is in view, I'll take advantage of that to start drawing it in. And he looks very different from our step-by-step orangutan because he's an adult male and we were drawing a juvenile female. So his skin is a bit darker and he has these pads on the side of his face as well. And his hair is longer and he's just bigger in general. But he is what I was able to get while I was at the zoo. So that is what we are doing. And because these parts of his face were available, I'm just going to do it very lightly, adding it in. And I'll work off that a little bit, just starting out with just the very, very, very basics of the shape of the animal. Starting to try to get form. And wherever I see some sort of curvature or change in the direction of the shape, I will make a little mark there, like I did here. And his hair is so long. Covers most of the details of the body, so it will probably be pretty simple overall to sketch. His hand is pretty much covered. And most of his face as well, for the most part. So I may end up changing where this is located here. Might be a little bit, looks like it's a little further up than I originally drew it. Covering his face, and his face is a little bit lower down. And you just kind of draw in some really sketchy lines until you get to where you feel this is supposed to be. So very sketchy, not exact at all, a little all over the place. Since this animal is moving, position might change a little bit, so I'm readjusting my drawing based on that from the beginning, and I'm working off a composite loop, so it won't change too much from this. It is definitely more challenging in person when the animal decides to move and change. I'd love to show you that, but it would be a very long video, and I don't really think it'd be possible for the demonstration. So I'm adding some details in here. And like I said, just adding things in as I see them. And if I was in the field at the zoo sketching this animal, it would just take a lot of more time sitting and waiting until either the animal is in a position or view in which I can see what I'm trying to draw, or maybe even just getting some quick gesture sketches on the paper and working off of that, or having that on the side and then eventually developing it. But either way, you want to start with some very light pencil marks. And so in order to demonstrate how to use this sketching method, composite video is the best thing to do. Sometimes you just have to fill in a few pieces best you can. And some of these things can also be redefined later. So now I have this very, very, very rough, sketchy orangutan. Maybe just for to give it a little sense of place with drawing in the top of that rock a little bit that orangutan's sitting on. So now that I have this basic drawing, I'm going to add some paint. I didn't find my paints to be very easy to revive as usual, so I went ahead and remixed them based on the color formulas from the step-by-step painting. So first I'll want to use the lightest color, this kind of yellowish color. And even this, though this is a darker animal, there are some areas that are a little bit lighter. Not so much in the face. Looks like it's all pretty dark, but in the fur areas there's some golden hue that you can see through. So I'll just add very light wet wash to the, and I'm not adding a lot of water to my paper. Instead I'm taking most of that out and adding it when it's pretty dry. When I refer to what I mean, it had a lot of water added to it in the palette to make it lighter. And then I'm dabbing it off onto my towel to take that water off before applying it to my paper so that I don't get any warping, because this is a very thin watercolor paper. I'm just going to add it to these furry areas. This upper area is kind of dark, so I'm not going to add it there. But I'm going to add it all these areas that I find are fairly hairy, which is the majority of this orangutan. And then his hand here. eating something green, so I will need to mix a green color as well. Kit for this month was also the 34H turquoise blue, so you can use 1 drop of that. And a few drops, 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of the 1H Hansa yellow. And mix it up to create a green. And you want to keep it really light and wet. We even want it a little more yellow. So we'll test it out on our test strip. I'm creating a new color. It's pretty good, I think. I might do that and just a little bit of the yellow on its own. Maybe try adding 1 more drop of yellow. Mixing it up and testing it out. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Let's add some more and mix it in. I'll give you the right formula. That'll work. So I can just take some that's really wet with very little pigment and add that over to it. The kale that this orangutan is eating is very yellow. Doesn't have a lot of green to it. You can play around with that. And we may be adding maybe a little bit more too. Maybe I'll add, I think this is what I drew in is a little bit of kale here too. So I'm going to add another couple drops of the 21H sepia to my brown color. And I'll test it on my test strip before applying it. That looks pretty good. So it's just a darker animal, since I'm guessing because it's more mature from what I've observed. And go ahead and add that. And it's actually pretty much all over this orangutan from the head and it's very dark at the top, but then there's parts in the face that are a little bit lighter, so I'll try to do an even lighter initial wash over that area and then bring it a little darker later. But it's pretty dark. Same thing with the hands. A little bit is peeking out there, and it's darker along the edges and lighter in the center. The light's hitting, or maybe where there's been a little bit more wear in the orangutan's appendages. So just kind of keep those light, a little bit more gray. So once we add the darker colors around that, that'll pop out a bit more. So I'll let that part dry and I'll work up the fur a bit more, or the hair. red hair is so thick on this male orangutan. There are some dark areas in there as well. We'll start with this reddish color first. And just using strokes to create the hair once you get it to the consistency you like for the watercolor. You can use some strokes to bring that hair texture. Just make sure to add it in the direction of the hair. And I drew that direction in a little bit, so I'm following it in my sketch. And this is a really messy look right now, and if you were at this stage, you might not have confidence to continue, but just keep with it. It's gonna look great. It'll all come together. A lot of times, paintings go through an ugly stage, especially sketchy ones like this. I'm doing some broader strokes because this orangutan's hair kind of is in these broader chunks. So I'm using kind of a flat part of pressing down on my brush to create it kind of flat, and then as I pull it down, it's kind of getting rough, and I think that's mimicking some of the texture of that orangutan's hair. Not all smooth, it's kind of crimpy and rough. And it's not necessarily patchy, but like the younger orangutan, but it definitely has some of that golden coming through. If you mess up at all, you can redefine areas. This is just a sketch. Just have fun observing this animal and adding in the paint and practicing. This is dried, so I'm going to add a little bit of this reddish color to the top of the head. So I see that kind of coming through here. Of his head there, and a little bit on the side here, just a little bit. And there's a little, I'm gonna take the paint off and spread this out because it was a little bit darker than I wanted. There's a little bit in his side of his face here, and kind of like highlights through it looks like. And even his eyes. I just determine those where the eyes are going to be. And again, this looks really crazy right now, but it will all come together. Next, I'm going to add this darker color again in another layer. Let's check to see that everything's dry. This isn't quite dry yet. It's not quite dry, but we'll work on the hands while that dries. And again, it's dark on outside. And I'm doing a very rough sketch of these fingers here. And I can bring, it's very, very dark here behind in this image. You can't really see a lot. To add some depth, I'm going to darken that back end area. Broaden that if I need to later. It's better to start small. So you can always go darker, but it's very hard to go lighter. of the hand. This one is really hard to see. It really blends in with the background. But it's definitely there. I'm going to add a little more red around it to define it a little bit more. Or even just a more dark area down here. And then I'm going to add more to the face since that's dry. Maybe even the top of the hand here. So that is dry as well. Adding in a little bit of these dark areas to define it, going with the direction. Of the fur. And now I'm going to work on the face. Start with this nose. And we'll have to jump to something else because he's not in the best position. When you're field sketching, it's best to kind of work with what you can at whatever time. And even this is a composite video, it's still an animal moving. And it might be a minute, you might have to sit and be patient until the animal moves back into a position that works for you to finish this. So I'm going to focus when I can on the different parts of his face. If anything's too dark and I need to wash or take the color and move it through, just take that color off on my towel and then add a little bit of wet water that's clean to the paper to pull it around where I need it. And again, working on, this is all dry now, so I'll kind of work on the fur whenever I need to wait for the animal to be in a more favorable position. And there. Or I can just wait. Too dark with the eyes, so I can take the paint off of my brush, dab it, and then kind of just pull that paint off with a dry brush. And I can move it over here because that's going to be a little darker anyway. So you can see that kind of removed that color and that mistake. And it's a sketch, so it's okay. And I did want it to be a little darker, so that'll work out well. Keep working on this face, and I'm going to base it on some of these drawing marks I made. Really dark face here, but it's important not to work too dark too fast so that it doesn't look like just one thing. Just has to have definition and the different parts. And it's important, especially when out in the field sketching, to work slowly as the animal moves. You can work fast and that will be fine too. But it won't give you as clear the details of the animal. And the faster you work, the more likely it's going to be a little more abstract. which is fine too. Get whatever kind of study you can get. And to fill in this space, this is a little bit bigger than maybe it should have been. I'm going to add some hair and fib it a little bit, because there are plenty of times when he's eating and this hair is here, and then there's some more green. I'm probably add more green there, and then I'll add a little more brown too. It's kind of jumping around and changing things as needed. I think I want a little bit more yellow, so I'm going to add another yellow to part of this green color I have. Make sure my brush is clean, and then mix that up and add it in, making sure not to touch the areas that are already wet from the red. They will blend together. Just adding that in there a little bit more. And this still looks absolutely crazy and messy, and that's totally fine. The area around this orangutan's eye is really dark. It also has this ridge in his forehead right here. And I see those as defining characteristics in his face. It's also very dark right here and the side here, and where his this area right before it gets to his face. Continue to build up this color, just kind of slowly, because I can. To the drier areas. Again, back here and over the fur, there's a little bit that's a little darker, and I can define that with my pen later, or go ahead and define it now. I don't want to get too carried away with these details. I just want to add in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and write in the common name and the scientific name. And now I'm going to use the 005 micron to just add some more of the outlines, pretty much what I added in with the sketch, just to give a guideline before I add some thicker lines. Now I'll go ahead and add in some thicker lines using the 01 micron. And lastly, adding the 08 micron lines. And most of these lines are going to be this because the color is so dark and thick. This is the one that's going to show up. think I like where this is at, so I'm gonna leave it like this. It's a very sketchy orangutan, and you might find if you're sketching this in the field, use the same techniques. It might be very challenging, just keep practicing. And great job observing your